Aloha! Welcome to another episode of Truth in Movies. I'm a movie buff, and I like the popcorn that fell behind me. I like researching and seeing what resonates with me on my truth-seeking path. And one of the things that resonates with me strongly has been movies, but also video games and music videos, lyrics, stuff like that. I see a lot of that reflecting all of the little breadcrumbs that I've come across whenever I do my own esoteric research. So, as a part of that, we do our Truth in Movies series. This series, tonight, it's a little late night. So, welcome everybody in the chat. Good to see everybody. It's a little bit of a late night, so it's going to be more of a laid-back presentation. I was working on a few other things throughout the day today, but we're going to break down this Amazon Prime series called Fallout. It's right up my alley. I had about 1 million people telling me you have to watch Fallout, you have to check it out. This is all of the plasma apocalypse. Everything's in this, and they're right. I did. And we're going to check out a few of the elements. We're also going to talk about the games. So this show is actually based on a video game called Fallout, where these people have these underground shelters that were built by corporations, and they're put into those shelters by the corporations, knowing that there would be a nuclear war. It also takes place on sort of an alternative timeline. So it's not the traditional timeline that we're used to. In the Fallout world, the timeline diverted back in the 50s. So back in the 50s, instead of mankind using their nuclear research to, to basically try to destroy the world and stuff, a lot of it was made public. And so people started using nuclear energy to power things and invent stuff like robots, like Mr. Handy, right, that you see right there. So this actually takes place before the nuclear fallout, before these nuclear bombs go off. All these people are starting to civilization is just starting to dive into technology. And that is when the world ends. That is when the apocalypse happens. Now, that's also something that I feel mankind is now doing. Just starting to grasp technology and to try to figure it out in its infant forms, what we could do with it, how we should be using it, etc. So it's exactly portrayed to us in a cartoonified version, in a cartoonified way, in the video games and in the movies, which reflect the video games. This one's Mr. Handy. He's supposed to be like this little household droid robot type of thing, but the Mr. Handys can be used for all types of things. It just depends on their programming. As you can see right here, there's a part where you think he might actually slice this guy who's walking out of the house, and they show this to us in the movie too. I'm just going to call it a movie. It's really a series, but the robots do whatever they're programmed to do, and killer robots are a part of the plasma apocalypse, right? So I talk about how the atmosphere becomes electrically charged. It becomes electrically amplified every other cycle. Right now, we live in the cycle where the atmosphere is being drained. All of the energy in the world is being drained and charged back down into the earth. So we lack a lot of that energy. And so we have to come up with other ways to get it, like electricity. And so that's how we power all of our stuff now. But in the future, people will have free energy. It'll be free energy the world across because energy will be everywhere. The world will be energized. People will be energized. Machines will be energized. The dead will be energized, which play a part of this too. Now, going back to the story, the lore about Fallout. This is just a little thumbnail from the video game. But the story is back in the 1950s, the people used their nuclear technology to better their lives instead of how we've done. And the corporations of the world, specifically this corporation that builds these vaults, they're called Vault Tech. So they represent our modern day corporations of the world, and therefore the modern day countries of the world, because the modern day countries are basically gigantic corporations. So these corporations build these vaults ahead of time, knowing that they themselves were going to sell all the vaults because they were going to tell people that there was going to be nuclear fallout that they would cause. They're the ones that actually drop all the bombs. So it's not country against country. Kind of reminds me of Orwell's 1984. In 1984, in the book, it's a very dystopian future or whatnot where things are out of control. And the government has their fingers in everything, right? In that book, they talk about how there's these rumors of war, but it's not real actual wars. It's just their own governments dropping bombs on the outskirts of their cities to make their citizens think that they had enemies that were these other countries out there. That's exactly portrayed to us in the Fallout movie and in the video game too. So this company, this corporation called Vault Tech, they create all of these underground vaults ahead of time because they have secret knowledge that the world is going to be destroyed on the surface. That reflects what we talk about with the plasma apocalypse on our surface world. How there are certain families and lineages that have created these companies as a form of energetic manipulation or power or control, right? To retain power. And they've passed on those companies generation after generation, and also the secrets of what all of these symbols mean. You know, a lot of people see channels talking about Illuminati hand signs and signals and glyphs and images and just a lot of the symbolism that traces its origin back to the destruction of the world, a cyclical destruction of the world. So that's how they can know and prepare for it to come, because it's already come before and they're aware of the cyclical nature of it. So they prepare for it. And all of these vaults, it turns out, are actually designed as a sort of, not just to control everybody and to put them in vaults, but each vault gets to control its population by these overseers, the people who are in charge of the vaults, which are actually people who were not born in the vaults. They're people from the modern day that used to be business owners and stuff. And so basically they sell these vaults to business owners. And they promise them, you'll get to recreate the world however you want to. You'll get to run your vault however you want to. And in the show, each business owner's like, I'd like to have a vault that's run by my robots. And another person's like, I'd like to have a vault that's run by super mutants. Or I like to have a vault where it's just a utopian society. And so these corporations and businesses buy these vaults, and then they load their people up into them, and then they prepare themselves for the actual bomb dropping. Now, here's something that's an integral part of the video game and the show. This is called a Pip Boy, and the vault dwellers all have to be equipped. I mean, it's strongly recommended. Basically, you have to wear one of these little ankle bracelet, arm bracelet things if you want to be a vault dweller. And it's basically modern technology that, you know, tracks your heartbeat, your health, what you're doing, how many steps you've taken. Does this sound familiar? Right? It should, because we have that today. We have this technology that's sold to us that's actually just keeping track of us and reporting all of its information to the corporate leaders so that they can have the information, which is power. And then they use that power over the very people that think that this is some kind of a awesome benefit to them or whatever. So they have these little smartwatches that are oversized from the 50s, right? This is like a 50s version of the future, basically. And it tracks them. It has maps on there. It tells them everything about their world, tells them everything about themselves. And the people in this particular vault, this is the main character. Her name's Lucy, of course, right? People in Lucy's vault are very naive, basically, about anything and everything. They've been stuck into this vault, and they're just taught like the good ways. There's no balance. There's no neutrality. In her vault, it's all this wannabe utopian society where everybody's always expected to be completely nice to each other, and there's never any problems or anything. So it's interesting when her vault opens, right? There's a series of events that happen when she needs to get out of that vault, which nobody's allowed to leave their vaults to, which is also symbolic of the very world that we live in. All of these little vaults that are shown to us are symbolic of our world that we live in. Okay, whenever they show you a movie that surrounds itself with a particular house or a vault or a basement or, you know, different structures, oftentimes I see the macrocosmic, which is the larger picture, being symbolically portrayed to us as the microcosm. So they're taking our entire large world and all the people that are stuck inside of it being the world being ran by the overseers, right, and the corporations, and they put that into these little vaults, and they show you all of these little possibilities of how the world goes or how the world has gone before. and how the world will go again, right? All the different futuristic technologies and stuff like that, the mutants and stuff. So this is what it looks like whenever they look at their little Pip Boy. And on there, they have stats. They have all these different stats. It shows them what weapons they have, what they're wearing. It records every single thing about them, right? And they're all ecstatic to have one and to wear one. So as a part of this, it shows them all of the little stats about them. They call this special stats. So the special stands for all of the 7 different, is it 7? I don't know. It's these different letters that represent strength, right? So it shows their level of strength from 0 to 100. How strong are you as an individual compared to everybody else, right? Perception, how well aware of your surroundings that you are, right? How well you perceive things. They track this information and then they display it to everybody. So everybody knows what everyone else's stats are. And stats are a huge part of like getting promoted and stuff in that world. Endurance is how long you can go for doing different activities and stuff. Charisma, right? So how popular you are with other people, you know, if your charisma level is like a 10 versus a 2, or you're unpopular, or you're not really a people person, or you just, you know, have a vibe about you. Intelligence, how intelligent you are, right? They keep track of who is smart, who has a high intelligence, or an intelligent quotient, and a low one. Interesting. Agility is another one. How agile you are, who's capable of getting around and moving around, who's quick and who's slow, who's nimble and who's not. Luck. Luck's another one, right? Who are the lucky people? Who are the people that seem to just always have things go their way? They're in the right place at the right time. The right things are falling onto their path, etc. Even keeping track of these are our qualities. These are what we have. Every single one of us might as well be like a, you know, if we were in a little video game, we might as well have the same stats that we're constantly working on. The stats might fluctuate or whatever, and then people compare all of those stats. Oh, well, that person's more popular. Well, that person's more lucky. Well, that person's stronger, right? And I take all these stats. Now, I want to focus on luck for just a minute, because that's a superpower. Super strength, all that stuff is great. People ask me questions about the apocalypse all the time, specifically the plasma apocalypse, and as I see it, right? And a lot of people are worried that they're not going to make it because they're not the strongest, or I'm not the most intelligent, or I haven't studied all this stuff or whatnot. But you're factoring out a few other qualities, right? Like luck. Luck can be extremely helpful to a person, right? Now, personally, I believe that what we call luck isn't just blind luck, but it's energetic. It has a lot to do with what's happening with a person's aura and the energy that they put out, and how that reacts with the surrounding energy and how it reverberates back to them, right? How it comes back. Also karma, you know, it's another similar concept. Like for me, my luck is opposite as the traditional luck. Friday the 13th, that's always been like one of the luckiest days of the year for me. I always feel really good on Friday the 13th. I have good things happen to me when I do see a black cat. I don't purposefully walk under ladders just because I don't think that's a good idea. Wisdom also probably, you know, plays a role. Like what you do with your intelligence, right? Not just being intelligent. Like this guy is sitting there reading a bunch of books. That might make him more intelligent. He might acquire more information, but I'd rather be wise. What do you do with all of that information? How does it affect you? What decisions do you make with what you have? You know what I mean? Those are the types of things that shape the future. And these are the special abilities, I guess you could say, that they showcase on the video game and in the movie, which help a person or hinder them on their journey, on their path, whatever it might be. One person might be on a path where super strength, which is what most people go for at first, is really attractive. And having super strength is, you know, something that they would like, well, if I have super strength, I can handle any situation, until they get to a computer that needs to be hacked. Or, you know, then intelligence would come into play. Or they're just wandering about aimlessly lost, and, you know, they might have super strength but fall into a trap or something, where luck would also play a huge part, where the lucky person might not fall into that trap because they just felt like going some other way, following their intuition. All right. Then, so we have back in like the 1950s, right? All these people bought their vaults, usually rich people, right? Of course, because the people sell their places in the vault. They sell the actual vault to the corporations, like these high top people. They sell the vaults to these different corporations, and then the vaults sell spots in the vault to the vault dwellers or to your average person. And then they put a bunch of how else are they going to sell a vault to survive the end of the world, except for with fear, right? By causing I'm going to try to be careful how I say this, but by purposefully causing things to happen to their own people in the show, right? They were able to successfully install fear into the people by spreading propaganda and by purposefully dropping bombs themselves to, harm their own people, which would cause the rest of them to want to buy a place in the vault because they were sure that the world would end, right? However, nobody knew that it was the companies that were ending the world. It wasn't Russia. That's how the companies made it look. They would put this all in the news. Oh, it's the commies. Oh, the Russians, North Korea, or, whoever the popular characters are in our modern world. Like I always say, I've never met anybody from Russia that I didn't like, that I had a problem with, any Russians or anything. As a matter of fact, I made pretty good friends that were from Russia. I've not felt any way about people from North Korea or any other country in the world. I really should say any other corporation in the world. Right? Because that's what it is. They're all citizens of corporations. They're just people, just like us. And I'm sure that if our corporation is similar to the other ones, because they're all really the same one big corporation, like in Pixar, by and large, you know what I mean? It's all the same big company. They just put up different signs to make you think that they're all different companies. And they create a sense of division, but it's not. It's really just to drive sales. And sales are just manipulating energy. People use currency in order to pay for things, right? That currency is a current, and it's our energy that the companies are trying to control, right? They try to control the currency and the currents, so they try to control the people as well. So the companies drop this bomb on these various cities. This one happens to be Los Angeles, I believe. And so the people take off, they run down into their vaults, they go down into safety, and they wonder what's happening on the surface, right? They're basically told and led to believe that just all life has been wiped out. There's no survivors, which is also what I get a lot of whenever I hear people talking about the apocalypse. People often insinuate, I found, that that when the world ends, that's it, that it's the end of the world and there are no survivors at all. But I believe there are. I just believe it's so many people die and so many people perish that people feel like they couldn't possibly make it because there's not going to be any survivors. But if I look back in history, and when we look at the historic records and the myths and the legends and the histories by word of mouth that has survived from country to country across the world and across time, we can put those together and use comparative mythology to see that there have been survivors to these cataclysmic events that have befallen us. So all these people in the movie, they go down, they hide into their little vaults while the world is experiencing this nuclear fallout. Now in the movie, it's from bombs. It's from the companies dropping actual nuclear bombs. That's the propaganda. The movie supports the video game, the movie, they all support the idea that we put forth in our world. The propaganda, which is the nuclear bombs dropping, okay? That the nuclear bombs are going to drop, etc. I personally don't see any evidence that there's ever going to be any type of nuclear World War III. I just don't see any. It doesn't make sense to me because then they'd be killing all of their own slaves and they'd be killing all of their own corporations and all that stuff. Personally, I believe that they created nuclear bombs in order to try to blow a hole in the firmament, and that they're, testing various forms of technology to try to escape this world and to try to get out of this world. But that's my own theory on that. Anyways, so these vault dwellers, they all go down and they wonder what's happening on the surface, right? All this radiation, the whole surface is irradiated by all these nuclear weapons. Now, symbolically, if what I present as like the plasma apocalypse theory, if that's true, then the world would be irradiated. That there would be cosmic radiation that comes down from above when the firmament opens up or recedes like a scroll, like it says in the Bible, and allows all of that ionized hydrogen to come down and to manipulate the surface, to blow holes in the ground from the thunderbolts of the god, from electrical discharge, from the dome itself, basically. And it would blow all of these little craters into the earth. There would be radiation in various forms, with all the influx of ionized hydrogen and energy that goes all throughout things, gamma rays coming down from above, and it will change life on Earth. Terraforming it, actually changing the landscape, but also changing the biological life forms, which I'll show you examples of here in a minute. Meanwhile, everybody down in the vaults in the underworld, which is now where they are symbolically, right? They're the Underworld People. They're down there exercising, hopefully, in different vaults, getting healthier, trying to work together, all getting ready to come to the surface to make the world a better place, which is how it's presented to us in the movie and the video games. This resonates with my research about people who live under our very feet in the underworld, or in Sheol, or the Underdark, or Hades, or Hell, etc. There are cavernous openings down there. And every story that I've come across, and I've shared many of those stories, right? From historic records to just fiction on my channel, all of those stories have many things in common. One of those is that those humanoid beings, or, we could call them humans or whatever, but if you remove a human from its environment long enough, it will eventually adapt and start, looking humanoid instead of human like us, as we're used to here on the surface. All of those creatures down below were advanced, right? In all these records, people talk about them being advanced, having advanced forms of technology, magic abilities, being very healthy, gigantic, strong, and intelligent. Their intelligence is one of the things that is continuously talked about all of the time. So while the surface world, where we live, surface dwellers, is being irradiated, and things are mutating, and things are changing, and the landscape is dangerous, and there's strange creatures roaming about, the people down below are safe. So this is just an example from the movie of how they do things normally. They get together, they have meetings, but you can tell there's a lot of tension in a small place like that. Whenever you have a large population, as they're procreating more and more within their vaults and stuff, and it starts to develop, pressure builds. They start to develop this tension, many forms of tension, actually, right? And they develop different ways that people on the surface are not used to. It's alien to them. They're strange. This is also reminiscent of, the various stories of, for example, different tribes of humans throughout time. The Tartarians, or the barbarians, are an example. Tribes of people that came from the far north, migrated down in the northern hemisphere as they roamed about as nomads and settled, almost as if they were wandering an apocalyptic world trying to find their place in it, right? They were described as having strange language, odd customs, just being weird people, strange people. That's probably where the origin of the word weird, strange, odd, all this stuff probably comes from. The weird sisters, as witches, basically, etc. But anyways, so this is the part in the film. You can see Mr. Handy over here. This is the part where Lucy leaves her vault because her dad was kidnapped. It turns out that her dad was actually from 200 years ago. He was cryogenically frozen, I believe, and he was one of the business people, but he didn't tell anyone that in his vault. He pretended to be a normal vault dweller like everybody else, but the fact was, he wasn't. He was a part of an elite group of people that had secret knowledge about the world ending, why it ended, and what was happening on the surface as compared to what was happening below the surface or in the underworld. Right? So she goes to look for her dad, not knowing that he's a part of all of it, and he's one of the people that actually caused the bombs to drop. On the surface, this is what she finds. She comes across, some of these will be from the video game, some will be from the movie and stuff, but she comes across mutated animals, right? Creatures that have two heads. Now, we might initially look at this and go, oh, that's so weird, that's so strange. But we have this already. This is in our world right now. It's just an anomaly. But in the world to come, when the energy is amplified and you know, things start to change as far as biological life forms and stuff, then all that junk DNA in people's bodies and all that foreign DNA that's in our bodies that, you know, has got there from us making ourselves toxic and stuff, changes our bodies, changes people, animals, and insects, right? So it's perfectly normal. I mean, not normal. It's possible. It's naturally possible for all things to grow two heads, right? Siamese people, Siamese animals and stuff like that. There's many different examples that I could show you that you could easily Google. But when we see this today, it's weird, it's otherworldly, it's fantastic, because this is all stuff we've forgotten about, right? It's been repressed in our collective subconscious mind. So they go out, and what used to be tiny insects have now grown in size to be bigger than, oftentimes bigger than people are. So here's a good example. You see this little crab that grows and grows and grows until basically it is a monster. Gigantism returns to the surface. Now, in my perspective, right, through the plasma apocalypse lens, that's because of the influx of oxygen, ionized oxygen that is released, terrestrial energy that's released in abundance out of cavernous openings and fills our atmosphere and our world with more oxygen. Insects are going to grow to gigantic sizes because they breathe oxygen through their skin or their exoskeleton or whatever. And the more oxygen that there is in the atmosphere directly correlates with the size of insects and bugs. So you might want to think about that next time you're eating seafood or shellfish or whatever you want to call it. They're gigantic bugs, okay? But anyways, the bugs grow to gigantic proportions, right? And that's directly due to the influx of terrestrial oxygen, ionized oxygen, that's released. So we have two different forms of energy that are being released into the world, contributing to the energetic amplification of the atmosphere itself, which is ionized hydrogen from above and ionized oxygen from below, terrestrially, right? One changes life, usually for the worse, okay? Mutating things, causing radiation and electrocuting things and stuff like that. The other one is cold plasma. The other one is energy that works with and gives life to and health back to and restores humanity and animals and other things too. This is a time of magic. It's a time of red versus blue. So here's just another example of, you know, from I think this is from the video game, but it's showing you what it looks like when you have all of those creatures. If I just would have shown you the creatures, you'd be like, oh, that's just a cartoon of some monsters eating some guy. But when you know the backstory, you realize that the monsters are just gigantic forms of what we already have in our world. Now, other creatures that I call phantazoids that are not native to the surface, when they transgress, when they leave the boundaries that have kept them away, either above in you know, beyond the firmament, or below in the underworld, and they come here into our mesocosm, they are now phantazoids. They're otherworldly gigantic creatures, insects, animal types, worm types, and humanoids, and many other types too. And they're gigantic, so they're seen as being monstrous in comparison to us, who have been shrinking in stature, in strength, in health, in lifespan. Over time, little by little by little, we've become accustomed to it. Now in the show, this was super interesting to me, because you know my mascots, right? The jelly, and then I have a tardigrade, purposefully chosen because it's basically a type of phantazoids. It's a tiny, smallest animal in the world. And plus it's correlated, its relationship with space and how they're always relating the tardigrade to outer space and stuff like that. And then the axolotl, which I have an axolotl named Glyph or Glyphette. You know, there's a boy glyph and a girl glyph. This is an axolotl in that world that has grown to gigantic proportions, right? This happens to be the same exact color as one of my logos. It's mutated. And it's huge and gigantic. Now this one right here, I believe they actually combined this with human DNA or something. But the combination of human DNA with animal DNA and it leading to and having monstrous consequences has been shown to us many times. For example, the movie The Fly is a classic example where Jeff Goldblum creates these energetic pods, right? he goes inside of one, and the pod is designed to perfect him, to get rid of all his sicknesses and imperfections and stuff. But that energy that's inside of the pod recognizes that there's foreign DNA in the movie The Fly, which is a fly that went into the, one of the pods. So it incorporates, it combines the DNA of the fly with the DNA of the human to try to make sense out of it and make the best creature possible with the building blocks that it's been given. Now that, for me, is reason to do a double take or a self-diagnostic on things like my energy, my diet, what I watch, what I take in, those things of my daily life that become a part of me that actually change and program and reprogram my DNA, but especially the things that we eat. And that goes back to the old maxim, you are what you eat. Might actually happen one of these days, right? You just imagine all the people, and I'm not bashing on anybody's diet. You eat whatever you want to eat. I have a Pepsi right here. I'm working on myself, but I'm also not going to be ignorant just because I have bad habits. I'm not going to dismiss them or exclude myself. If I have foreign DNA in my body, when that cosmic energy comes down to try to refigure out the world and make it right again, it's very possible that people that stuff themselves full of sausage and bacon and pork and stuff might become pig people, and many other versions of that. So they have gigantic flies that they call bloat flies. The flies basically like puke all over the people and stuff. That's what they do, right? If these insects do things on a small scale, imagine what it would look like when they grow to gigantic sizes. And I do have a video all about gigantic insects on my Ancient Oblivion playlist. So it's very compelling video about gigantic insects, gigantism, restored to the world. And it's an interesting theory, and there's lots of evidence for it as well. It might actually have you reconsidering seafood at the very least. My research definitely changed my diet when it comes to seafood. I don't do any of that anymore. So this thing's called a mirelurk. It's basically a crab that just grew to gigantic sizes. And a crab is basically a spider in the ocean, right? So these are basically ocean insects. There's giant ants in the Fallout series or the Fallout game. Gigantic ants. Now, we've talked about historic records that have been left to us about stories of those who have seen and experienced firsthand gigantic ants the size of goats. Remember? So there was the story of the male Dween, which was Irish history. And there was the story of the Arabic story of the giant ants, the sand ants. Remember, they would dig down and they would kick up all that gold dust, and then people would try to go grab some of the gold dust, and then they had to take an extra camel with them so that they could release it, and it would get eaten and slow down the ants when they charged after them. All of these things have been recorded in our history in some fashion, in some way or another. It's just up to us to put those pieces back together, to find them, to make all of our puzzle pieces fit so that we can see a bigger picture. Rad scorpions. So these are called rad scorpions. They did have gigantic scorpions in the old world. Even academics admits this. These scorpions, I couldn't even show you how big they are because my screen is only so big, but they were basically, if I put out my entire wingspan of my arms, and I'm 6'2", so they were gigantic scorpions, huge scorpions. Lobsters are kind of a version of that in the ocean. Mole rats, other creatures, and then we have what most people would refer to as like zombies or something, but in the Fallout series, these are called ghouls, right? Ghouls are people who lived on the surface, who mutated and became irradiated. They became sort of sick, and they became so used to their sickness that it just became a part of their everyday lives. Now let's talk about these ghouls. Now this guy's missing his nose. He's a human, but he's an irradiated human. He's missing his nose because that's one of the things that falls off. There's nothing, there's no bone or anything right there or whatever. So their bodies are falling apart from the radiation, right? Too closely exposed to like the negative radiation, negative energy. The ghouls are very much kind of like zombies, right? As they're typically portrayed. This guy has his wits about him though. And I've seen a lot of truth in movies where they show us that not all zombies will just be unintelligent, brain feeding, killers or whatnot, but that there are some exceptions, and it depends on how long dead the body has been, which makes sense, right? There are people that die and they are brought back to life in the hospital. They're dead. They're clinically dead, and they come back. And they might come back slightly different depending on how long they've been dead for. So you can imagine if you have a body that's, decrepit and has been dead for like a year, rotting away underground, and then the energy flows through the earth and its DNA activates and it starts to regrow and come back to life and stuff, that it might appear a little bit different. It might think and act a little bit different from a fresh body, right? Or a zombie that would be more agile or have its wits about it. Now, this one right here, this is what it used to look like back in the 50s, which is 200 years before this right here. I think he was also cryogenically frozen somehow. I don't know how he survived. Maybe it was the radiation. But just people living for 200 years and stuff as they portray it in the show, that's also touches on a reality, which is that people used to have longer lifespans. And we have short lifespans now. We're basically children. We're babies in comparison to what we used to be. We're immature, we're out of line, we're childlike. It's like the world is a gigantic preschool or a nursery. But anyways, they harp on that, and they talk about how some people are like over 200 years old and stuff. And these people remember how the world used to be. They're the storytellers. This cowboy, he just played a cowboy. This was him being an actor. He wasn't really actually a cowboy. This was a role that he played in some film. But because he survived, and everyone on the surface that's born into that world, or all those people in the vaults that were born into those vaults, none of them have any direct experience or knowledge with what we have today, with the world around us, with all of the technology that we're privy to, all of the strange customs that we have, that we just consider normal life. All the stuff, even this video that you're watching right now, will all become legend one day to all of those people that were born into that future world. Because this world, this post-apocalyptic scene, that'll be all they're used to. That'll be all that they know. So we, who are the survivors, become the future storytellers of another generation, of another epic, of another time, becoming patriarchs and matriarchs in our own right and fashion, which is kind of what this movie is all about, really. Now, the dead coming back to life is also a part of the plasma apocalypse. Not only does it bring robots to life and stuff and regenerate humans at the cellular structure or at the cellular level, but it also brings the dead back to life. Their DNA in their body, their RNA, goes into overdrive, and it starts to multiply. Their cells start to multiply once again, and their body regrows, which happens in this world today. If you think of a lizard losing its tail, almost everyone has been taught, that I've come across, that when a lizard loses its tail, or even an axolotl, which is probably one of the reasons why they showed you that, they were experimenting on the axolotls. Axolotls more so than lizards. I just use the lizard example because people are more used to that and it's probably more well known. An axolotl is like, you could cut many parts of that thing off and they'll each grow into a brand new creature. But anyways, those are examples of cellular regeneration that all life is capable of, that it's locked away and hidden away. All it needs is the energy. It just needs to be re-energized. And all of a sudden, lifespans will lengthen by hundreds and hundreds of years. Given the right conditions, anything can happen. Anything can change. All of our fantasy and fiction and sci-fi and stories come from somewhere, which is why the movies resonate so much with me. They're acting it out. They're portraying it. They're reenacting and showing us our ancient oblivion, things that we have forgotten about in our far-reaching history. Now, this particular zombie guy, remember I said he was irradiated? He needs to take certain medicines in order for him to not change. Now, the ghouls, there's the civilized ghouls like him, and if he takes his little medicine, he can prolong his health. so that he doesn't change into a feral ghoul. A feral ghoul is somebody like him, and they show you many examples in the show, who did not medicate themselves. They didn't try to treat their radiation or anything, and their body continued to get more decrepit and more decrepit, including their brains, their physical, actual brains. So when the brain started to deteriorate, then they became more base. Then they just wanted, they depended upon the more animalistic nature inside. So they just became consumers. Like in today's world, that's what everyone's called, consumers, right? That's what a zombie is. It's a consumer. It consumes, it eats, it's an eater. You know what I mean? So whenever the brain starts to deteriorate, people's motive and motivation in life becomes to just make the body live, because now it's a struggle to live. And in order to live, they have to steal energy from other life forms. This is what we call eating. And it's just a natural part of the way things are now. So it's not that it's evil or bad or corrupt or anything. It's just that's nature at the moment. But I look forward to the day when nature will change its course. And we don't have to eat other life forms, whether they be plants or animals or whatever. That we will be invigorated or reinvigorated from the inside out, giving life to other things instead of taking it away. So they kind of remind me, this is from the movie I Am Legend. That's exactly how these feral ghouls, this is what they remind me of. I couldn't find an example of the feral ghouls like animated. This is from the video game. But this, if you've seen I Am Legend, then you've seen feral ghouls. Their mind is gone, right? It's just mush. And all they want to do is destroy and tear apart and eat. They're also what I call plasma possessed, right? Plasma possession is, we work on our souls. We work on our energy on the inside. And we're constantly, and this is not just me saying this, this is ancient wise people, shamans, philosophers of old times that have all, alluded to this concept, which is that our bodies are shells or cases or vessels to hold the real creation, the real vessel on the inside, which is our soul, our spirit. That soul and spirit isn't just static. It isn't just one shape, one type, one personality or whatever. It's growing, it's morphing, it's changing, and the body acts like a cocoon for that soul. So, depending upon what actions we choose in life will shape and mold the soul within to become more negatively inclined or positively inclined, right? So anyways, and then last but not least, we've got the death clause. This is from the video game. It's the same people that made Skyrim. So it looks just like Skyrim. Like this is their little waiting loading page or whatever. This is a death claw behind me. Now in the game, the death claws are otherworldly creatures. They're not local insects on the surface that have gigantism. These are otherworldly creatures, phantazoids, as I was talking about earlier. These are creatures from below or from above that come down into our world, and they're gigantic already. And they often have horns, oftentimes. Horns are a natural part of many life forms, including humans. I've done many episodes where I share with you guys that humans can and do grow horns. It's a part of our puberty cycles, right? So if you think about having hundreds of years to live, then we would have different stages, necessary stages of additional stages of puberty, right? So for example, one of those is that your structure of your bones will continue to grow, and certain areas will continue to add more bone and more bone and more bone until eventually you basically have horns. Different people would have horns in different places, depends on your bone structure and how you have lived your life and other things too. But anyways, these are phantazoids. These are otherworldly, monstrous creatures. Now, these death claws are only one classification of phantazoids. On my website, you can go check out the different classifications, but these are the evil hunter type of phantazoids. Okay, these are the ones that will eat you, will destroy you, will come after you, but that doesn't mean that they're the only ones. Okay, and if we pay attention in the movies and video games and music videos and stuff, you'll see that there are other types of phantazoids that are portrayed to us along with these. These are just more popular because they instill fear into people, right? But there are many other types that are either neutral, they could care less about humans, or benevolent, where they work with humans and actually help us out and stuff, which is where I believe many of our modern day animals come from, especially those ones that look alien to us. And we keep them in zoos and stuff like elephants and rhinoceroses and, you know, other types of animals. Anyways, I think that's it. Yeah. So that's the gist of Fallout. It's showing and reflecting back to us things that we have forgotten about. And I didn't want to really take the time to break down the entire series because I'm in the middle of breaking down the Rings of Power, and I'm going episode by episode. But I did want to touch on this because I played the video game with my son. We have a blast together. And I have watched all of these episodes. I've watched all of them. There's sort of a cliffhanger at the end, which teases, you know, the next video game series, which is probably New Vegas, where it shows you a post-apocalyptic version of different cities. So it's all from different people's perspectives. And this is what the movies often do, is they show us the apocalypse at some point in time, or before it, after it, or during it, from different perspectives around the world, from different cultures, different civilizations, different geographies, different cities, and different types of people, right? People who are going through different things. Some movies show you the apocalypse and people are sleeping right through it. You know what I mean? But they're showing it to us more and more and more. And apocalyptic movies and video games are becoming more and more popular, I believe, because of the 100 monkey effect, right? People are starting to think about it. People are starting to realize it. All that locked away information, or spirit memory, as I call it, is being shared, and the energy is resonating throughout the world right now as the gases are being released from the earth, and the energy is amplifying, basically. And that's what the plasma possession is all about. It's the amplification of your inner spirit energy, your soul. And it comes out, and it shapes people's facial expressions. It shapes who they are, what they sound like, what they talk like, how they treat other people. It even shapes their reality and their perception, which is one of your special abilities, to use your perception. All right, cool. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for joining me on this special late night Truth in Movies. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
It'd be easier. Come.